Okay, so I've just started recording this session, and again, as I was telling you, that the very next thing that we are going to be talking about is something that is called account structure. Now, if you remember, there is one thing that we did in the last session. Again, that thing was getting our website linked with Google Analytics. While doing so, there was one step in particular that we had to go and act on through Google Analytics, and that step was to generate that tracking code. To generate that tracking code, in fact, let me just go ahead and take you to my Google Analytics really quick. To generate that tracking code, one thing you might have noticed was that we went ahead and started everything by creating a new account. So we went to our admin section, and in that admin section there was an option to go ahead and create a new account, and that's what we did. But that's basically something we did out of ease at that moment in time. But as you can see, just like we have an option on the far left to create a new account, just like that, we have two other options to either create a new property or a view on the right hand side. Now, the thing is that when we are trying to create our own tracking code, we might not always want to go ahead and create a new account. We might also want to explore to create a new property as well. And in today's session, we are going to learn the bifurcation between these three things. As you can see, if I go in my admin section, everything is bifurcated into these three parts: account, property, and view. So they must be important. And again, it is also going to go ahead and really let us at Google Analytics level really help us basically organize everything that we do. So again, without further ado, let's go ahead and start by learning what account structure is. Again, the main problem that we are solving over here is that when we are trying to go ahead and get our tracking code, not every time would we be creating a new account. Sometimes we should be creating a new account or a property or a view. And again, that is where we are going to kick everything off now. So going back to our notepad, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and delete some of this, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and draw a line. Account structure. And there are some really interesting things in like, account structure. First thing is that this account structure is made up of three things in particular: account, property, and then lastly something called a view. Now, these three things are in fact interlinked with each other. They have a relationship with each other, and that relationship is hierarchical in nature. So basically, what we have is that we have one account, and in each account, we have 50 different properties, and in each property, there are many views. Again, the parent is account, so each account can have many different properties stacked under it, and each property can have many different views under it. How many is something that you might be asking. Well, in Google Analytics free account, we get 100 accounts in total. That is the limit of accounts that we can have. We can have at max 100 accounts at any given point in time, and each of these accounts can hold 50 different properties, and each of this property can in turn have 25 different views under it. So that is the relationship, how they are really interlinked. Now, if I was to take a step back, and if I was to go ahead and ask you this, that okay, in Google Analytics, if there are actually, if I want to count all the permutations and combinations of account, in fact, I would be left with 100 accounts only. That's the maximum permutations and combinations that I can have for an account. How many different permutations and combinations can I have for property? How many do you think? If I wanted to, yes, absolutely right, Kuldeep. 5,000, again, that would be simply because we will multiply 50 by 100. So that's it. So I'll just go ahead and put 5,000 over here. Now, if I were to do the same thing for views, how many views do you think in total would there be, Kuldeep, or anybody else, Manoj? Yes, that's right. So 1,25,000. So 1,25,000, and this is because this time again we simply just go ahead and multiply 25 views by 5,000 because each of these properties will contain 25 properties each. Now, this kind of a combination this number, by the way, is going to help you in attempting one of your LMS questions. So I just wanted to bring this number up. So when you are looking at that LMS questions, you will know which is the right answer. Now, having said that, and as you can see, also it signifies that how many different permutation and combination Google is allowing us. So it can really help us realize the kind of gains that Google Analytics is trying to create in our lives. So many different permutation and combination for views is quite a lot. It's a very decent number of size. In fact, even a consulting organization which is taking care of many different websites will be able to go ahead and get a great amount of value because of these numbers. Again, it just is a sizable proportion in by any means. Now, having that said, now the next and of course the most important uh, question is that how many of these or how are these supposed to be managed? What are accounts? What are properties and what are views and when should we be creating these in the first place? Now Anand is saying, what does analytics paid account have that free doesn't? Well, there are two things which I know for sure. Apart from that, there are a few features which are available, but I'll tell you that there are two things in particular which are most lucrative for anybody, and that is that there are no limitations to how many views you can make, and there are no limitations to how much data can you actually collect. There will be something called sampling. There is something called sampling that Google Analytics relies on, and that sampling is basically that once you are collecting a lot of data, that what happens is that Google is trying to at every given point in time show you very quickly that exactly what happened. I mean, it's trying to show you data very quickly. So what happens is that of course when you're trying to do something quickly, then there is certain amount of accuracy that goes out of the window, and that is what Google Analytics does. It compromises in accuracy to give you results faster, because again, just imagine if you have 1 million or 2 million people coming on your website every single day, then what's going to happen is that you will have such a huge amount of data that if you had to look at only 1 week of data, that in itself would be quite a lot. Then if you start taking a look at 1 month of data, then 2 months of data, of course, that will be greatly or very vast in its complexity. So what happens is that in free version, it does something called sampling to make sure that you're able to see your results faster, and that is that it will not show you 100% accurate results or accurate metrics. It will not give you accurate numbers. In fact, what it will do is it will do something called sampling. That means that it will take 5% of your data and then it will predict what other 95% of data would look like. Of course, you take a small percentage of data and then again you extrapolate that. This is a technique that they use in opinion polls and exit polls and many other polls across the nation as well. But as you if you have been keeping up with the news, if you are a person who takes some effort in politics, you would know that these opinion polls and exit polls, no matter how extensive they are, they have a level of inaccuracy. In fact, at every single given point in time, you must, everybody knows that they are not going to be accurate at all. They are, if they are right or not, I mean, that also is always in doubt, and you only find out when that vote counting happens, right? So similarly, in Google Analytics also, when you are on free version, especially if you're collecting a lot of data, at that moment in time, accuracy goes for the toss. But again, it is trying to show you results faster. So these are two things which are very, very lucrative in premium version, because they do give you very accurate data. And of course, companies which are getting million customers in a day or million customers in a week, they are at a very, very large size. They're trying to solve very complex problems. So accuracy becomes something that they absolutely want to rely upon. So again, that is one unique feature. Apart from that, there are a couple of other things as well, but mostly it is the accuracy that Google Analytics sell in their premium version. So that is basically, in a nutshell, that how their versions are different. Now, having that said, coming back to the account, property, and view, as I was mentioning earlier, these three things are in fact really interlinked with each other. And how they are interlinked? They are interlinked with each other in a hierarchical level. So account is at the very top, then comes property, and then comes view. So 100 accounts we get. Each of these accounts create have 50 different properties, and each of these properties have 25 different views. Now, so far so good. So now, the most important thing for us to understand is how these accounts and properties and views behave. What are these things, and when should we be creating them in the first place? So let's go ahead and explore account to begin with. Let's see what this account is, and then let's see how and when should we be creating it. How should we be creating it? Well, that's pretty simple. We've already done that in the last session. You go ahead and click on this blue button on the far left, and you will see these 5 form fields. And once you've done that, there will be a tracking code waiting for you at the end. So that will be perfect. So now the big question is, when should we be creating them? Well, we should be creating them when we are creating a new line of business. That's when we should be creating this account. What does this mean? I'll go ahead and explore this a little bit further. For this, I will take an example of a company called Samsung. So Samsung, I'm sure all of you guys know about. Samsung is very popular for its electronics. Some things that you would probably be in love with Samsung for are their TVs, their mobile phones, and etc. Of course, in electronics, they do very well. But little or few of you guys know that in fact they are much like Reliance. They are Reliance of South Korea. So basically, they are in many, many different types of businesses, just like Reliance is. So they are actually in construction business as well. And of course, I have misspelled it. So let me just go and correct that. And they're also in military equipments. They create military equipments, and they're in shipping business, and you name it. They're definitely a conglomerate, which is there in quite a lot of different verticals. And of course, there would be more businesses that they're in. Now, if we were to compare two different businesses that Samsung has, businesses like, let's say, mobile phones. Just give me 1 second. So businesses like mobile phones versus military equipments. If we just even try to get started with this kind of a comparison, it would not take long for us to realize that in fact they are as incomparable as possible. I mean, there is nothing about these two businesses which where there is an overlap. If we talk about the price of mobile phones, Well, mobile phones may cost somewhere between 5,000 to 85,000. I mean, 85,000 is where they basically have Samsung Galaxy Note and all those things. Of course, they are on the higher ends of mobile phones. And of course, their price range would be somewhere between 5 to 85K. When it comes down to military equipments, however, the price actually goes ahead and skyrockets. To tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea about how much these military equipments cost. But if you have been keeping up with the news, how this government has been acquiring a lot of items and military equipments for our army from many different other nations, you might be reading the quotations, and of course, these quotations goes up in 6,000 of, I mean, thousands of crores. That's how much these defense contracts are. So again, I'll just go ahead and put some figure over here. Let's say that these military equipments cost somewhere between 6 to 6,000 crores. I mean, that's how different they are. Okay, so Simon is saying that my voice has been going away in the middle. Has it been a problem for a lot of you folks? Manoj, Shefali, Siddharth, is my voice coming going for you as well, or is it a pretty stable one? What is it? A little bit? It's been okay, Shefali says. No issue, Shefali says. All right, so good with me. Okay, stable. All right, so Simon, yes, so Simon, basically you can try disconnecting and connecting once again, but in the meantime, what I'll also do is I'll also try to keep the mic very close to my mouth so that I'm a bit more clear. So I'll try to do my best. But again, if the problem persists, please make sure that you are reconnecting to the platform and then things will probably be better. All right. Having that said, coming back to the example, as I was giving you earlier, the comparison between mobile phones and military equipments, again, what we are seeing is that this is no match. There is no overlap between these, or very little overlap between these two different businesses, right? Again, price is just one of them. Then you have TG, the target group. Target group for mobile phones is masses, right? So mobile phones are created for the masses by these companies. But if we talk about military equipments, well, these are there for restricted people. In fact, only government officials can go ahead and uh, inquire or buy ultimately these military equipment. Me and people like me and you cannot really walk into Samsung and say that, hey, you know what, I want one military tank. No matter how cool we think it is, uh, to be able to drive these tanks around the city, but again, that is something we cannot do. Alright, so Arnab is saying that the voice is gone. Is this voice stable? Aniket, Shefali, is my voice still with you, or voice is fine over here? Okay, okay. Arnab, please try to reconnect. Awesome. All right. Final thing, final piece that I want to put out over here right in front of you is the behavior of these target groups. As we mentioned in the previous step, that of course the target group is very different. One is for masses and the other one is restricted to only government officials. On the other hand, the behavior of these both target groups is also very distinct. There is no overlap here. At no point in time you will find that somebody is going to Samsung electronics store and saying that, hey, I want uh, this particular mobile phone as well as I want 5 missiles with that. No, you will never find that. Similarly, you will not find, even on the other hand, a government official walking into Samsung electronics or Samsung military equipment store and nobody would say that, hey, I want a tank with that and give me 9 Samsung Galaxy Notes. Nobody will say that. So basically, what I'm trying to advocate over here is that there is absolutely as much of a difference between these two different verticals as possible. And in fact, if we really take a look at these two objectively, there is very little common ground. So when we are starting a new business, when we are starting a new business which is so distinct in nature, which is so different from the one that we have already been doing, only in that case we should be creating a new account. Let's say again, I'll repeat that once again, we might want to go ahead and start everything by creating one account. When we sign up in Google Analytics, we actually go ahead and sign up for a account, right? But once that account is set up, once we have that tracking code, that first tracking code, after that, we will not be creating a new account ever, maybe. We would only be creating a new account if we are creating something so different which cannot really have any linkages with my previous business. And of course, mobile phones and military equipments, this example I gave you was very exaggerated in nature, only to show you that what kind of a thought is in place for that. But of course, in our real world scenarios, you might not be having a mobile phone store and you might not want to start a military equipment. I mean, this kind of a problem may not arise in your normal day to day life, right? But I hope the point is clear, and I'll give you one little mental trick to be able to solve this for yourself. That is the account needed in this case or not? I'll give you one simple mental trick, and that trick is to go ahead and think. Let's say if you have a business already set up and you are starting something new, now you need to think, if this was a retail store, if this was an offline retail store, can I do this new business in the same shop, or would I have to create a new shop to do this new thing that I'm going to start? Again, just as an example, if I have a, grocery store in which I basically only sell dal and rice, lentils and rice, and let's say if I have to start a workshop for being a car mechanic, if I want to do that, well, of course, I cannot do, I cannot start this new business at the same shop. I cannot really have grocery store and a mechanic shop at the same place. I cannot do that. I will have to create a new shop for it. In that case, yes, create a new account. But let's say that you have a dal and rice store or lentils and rice store, and then now you want to go ahead and keep packaged food as well. Well, that can be kept at the same shop as well. You are not really creating something really different. You are just extending what you are already doing. In that case, yes, you can actually go ahead and continue with the same account. You can actually go ahead and do all of that on the same website as well. Now, is this absolutely clear to everyone, that exactly what is an account, with an example that, hey, when should you be creating a new account? How does that really fit the entire picture? Is this clear to you, everyone? Aniket, is this clear? Siddharth, is this clear? Thank you very much, Siddharth. Adnan, thank you very much. Susoban, just let me know. Shefali, Simon, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Okay. So now there are a few misconceptions still. And for that, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and ask you a question just to make sure that this is clear to everyone. The question is that if we consider a company called Amazon. Now, Amazon, I'm sure all of you guys might know the company. Now, Amazon, if you go ahead and search on online, you will find that Amazon sells hair oils as well as air conditions, right? And if you take these two products together, you can actually go ahead and correlate them with what we were talking about over here as well. So basically, these two products are also as far apart as possible. They are definitely, they have a very big gap between the price range that they're selling in. And also, you'll find that the behavior is also very distinct. You will not find people going to grocery stores and say that, hey, I want a coconut hair oil, but I want an AC with that. You will not see that. Similarly, you would not expect people to go to Vijay Sales or any other very big electronic store and saying that, hey, I want an AC, but I want five coconut hair oils as well. You would not find this kind of a overlap as well. Now the question is that since these two different product categories are very distinct in nature, what do you think? Should Amazon be tracking the numbers, tracking the visitors' activity on hair oils category in a different account, and should they be tracking the activity on air conditions on a different account? So should they be using two different accounts for these two different categories, or they should be actually going ahead and tracking everything in one account only? What do you think? And of course, you can say either different or same to let me know your answer. Again, the question is pretty simple. Two different products, hair oils and ACs, very distinct in nature, just like we discussed. So, should these two different categories be in captured or tracked in two different accounts or in the same? So, Kuldeep says one account and two properties. Well, let's not go to properties. Again, just think of either accounts in the accounts perspective as well, either same or different. So I'm guessing Kuldeep says it's the same. So Aniket says same, Manoj says same, Shefali is the same, is saying same. Okay, perfect. Now, since it's a unanimous decision about same account, why do you think that it is going to be same account? Why do you think so? Why have you selected the same account as the answer for it? Aniket, Manoj, Kuldeep, what do you think? Shefali, Adnan, Siddharth, all of you guys mentioned same account. Why do you think you picked this answer and not different? So Sobhan is saying, I think when the business purpose is different, that is when we should be creating a different account. Then in Amazon's case, what do you think is the right thing, so Sobhan? Is the purpose different? The purpose same? And if that purpose is the same, then what is that purpose? Kuldeep is also mentioning along the same lines. He's saying Amazon is a single entity. And Adnan says because having two different accounts, each category does not make sense. In terms of analysis, it will be very difficult to study it across segments. That's a good one. Siddharth says because single account can have analysis of different products. Yes, absolutely. Uh, Now Aniket says because the gateway of all products purchased will be the same. And Suzoban says over here, business purpose is the same. It is e-commerce. Yes, absolutely right. So both the points that I wanted to touch on, you guys have given me the perfect answers for that. Aniket says so it's easy to track all conversions. Absolutely. So there are two components over here which are at play. First of all, kudos to you guys. I'm applauding for you. You definitely gave me the right answer. In fact, in most of my sessions, 99% of my sessions, I always get this. Kids always get this right because I ask it in such a way that it might seem that is very similar to what is going on with Samsung, but it's not. And you guys picked it up. Well, there are two things at play, as I was mentioning. One is absolutely you got it right that when it comes down to Amazon, there is one golden rule of thumb in setting up analytics account property and view. There is one golden rule of thumb, and that is that if there is something going on only on one website, you don't want to track it differently. You want to track it together. Because as somebody was mentioning that, of course, if there is any visitor going from one category to another, what you'll find is that the entire journey of a user will be split apart into. Of course, in most cases, you will not find people going and switching from ACs to hair oils. You will not find that. I get it. I agree with that. But during sale periods, when you know everything is off, generally what happens is people want to buy something on sale. So what happens is that they're trying to look for everything that comes to their mind so that they can find good deals on everything that they generally buy, right? So again, they might want to go ahead and switch between categories and even these rare categories during sale period. And of course, you don't want to split apart any visitor's activity. So as a golden rule of thumb, if there is something going on one website, you should be tracking it all together. So your analysis is absolutely pitch perfect. You are able to say with confidence that exactly what a visitor really does. You are able to tie that entire circle together. That's perfect. And another really important piece, which absolutely you guys are have pinpointed that as well, and that is that in this case that we were discussing of Samsung, even though we were talking about the same parent company, but if you really take a look at these businesses, these are two different businesses altogether, which are very distinct in nature. However, Amazon is actually a marketplace. That is what their business is, right? That is what their business is. And they're just providing platform for these new sellers to go ahead and be able to sell anything. If I go ahead and register tomorrow in Amazon to be an arms manufacturer, or maybe as a military equipment distributor, if I'm selling tank tomorrow or a military missiles tomorrow on Amazon, still Amazon's business model is going to be purely the same, and that is it is a marketplace. Simple. So absolutely kudos to you guys. These are definitely the 2 points that were going on in my mind, and of course you were able to go ahead and uh, basically hit the nail on the head on both occasions. That's perfect. Having that discussed, let's go ahead and jump into the next part, and that is called property. So property is also very, very important. And again, one thing you might remember from the last session, in fact, when we were creating the account, I mentioned specifically to ask you to go ahead and make a mental note about property, that how everything, in fact, even when we are creating a new account, in fact, four options out of five that you have to fill out are all about setting up your property. So with that kind of a thought, let's go ahead and see what a property is, and then let's see why did I say that property is the main protagonist, that all the action is going on. What is really going on in property? Let's go ahead and discuss that really quick. So again, let's go over to property, and of course, as I was mentioning, we get 50 for each account. And property, let's say, when should we be creating a new property? You can think of this as a touch point. So whenever we are adding any touch point to our website or to our business, we will be creating a new property. Or in a general layman's language, you can think of it as a website also. Of course, website is a very limited word, and I'll go ahead and explain as to what do I mean by touch point, what do I mean by website, and all of those things in the next few minutes. But at this moment in time, just know this, that we will be creating a new property when we are creating a new touch point for our existing business. Again, when we are changing our business, we will be creating a new account, but when we are only adding a new touch point to our existing business, well, we will be creating a new property. For this, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take another example of a company called Snapdeal. Now, Snapdeal is in fact a very similar company to Amazon. Snapdeal is also a marketplace where any seller can register themselves and they can sell things to people. And which touch points can they actually go ahead and interact with these buyers through? So touch points are nothing but platforms through which a seller can meet the buyer. Well, we have, of course, desktop website, right? We have mobile website, and I'll go ahead and write that as M site. Then we might also have an iOS app, right? And just like that, we might also have an Android app. So, in fact, you will find that most of the organizations which are working today, these big e-commerce, are again trying to find more and more platforms through which they can interact with their clients. In fact, there are many more touch points apart from these as well. You can think of smartwatches. So people like Flipkart have their apps for these smartwatches also. If you take a look at a company called Amazon, they can actually go ahead and interact with their clients through Amazon Alexa as well. So basically, which is like your voice assistant, you can actually go ahead and really interact. You can buy and sell things through Amazon Alexa. Like, how cool is that? So again, these are nothing but different touch points. These are different platforms through which your seller can go ahead and get in touch with your buyer. So again, these are just four examples in which Snapdeal goes ahead and reaches out to its own buyers. Now, what happens is that for each of these touch points, we want to be able to track these differently. We will never ever have one desktop website being tracked in two different properties. We will never do that. But at the same time, we should always make sure that we are having desktop website being tracked in one property, and in that property we will never ever let the data of any other touch point mix in. We will never ever do that. Now that might really throw you off a little bit. That might be a little interesting to some of you guys. Some of you guys might think, hey, you know what, I want to be able to track the entire user journey in one go. Then why am I not doing that? Well, what happens is that now on a very high level, it may seem that these desktop website and these M site and iOS app and Android app and even these apps on Alexa and all of these are basically the same thing only, right? Because ultimately a person is going to these desktop websites or these iOS apps or these Amazon Alexa to do only one thing, and that is to basically buy something from you. So the experience is very similar. So I should be able to see the data similarly as well. But the thing is that these different touch points are actually different environments. They are very different environment for a customer. Because of which, what you will always find is that people who are on your desktop website, they will behave very differently from the people who are on your mobile website. Because again, to us on a very high level, it may seem that hey, all of it is the same, right? The products are the same on these websites, the buttons and interactions are the same. If you click on add to cart on website or mobile website or app as well, the same thing will happen. No difference there. But again, there are very little big differences in each of these platforms. To illustrate that just in a greater depth, let me go ahead and ask you if any one of you, I mean, there are 12 of us over here and 11 of you guys, has anyone out of you guys has made a change in very recent times, that you changed from a Windows PC to a MacBook or from a MacBook to a PC? Has anyone has done that out of all the 11? Maybe yes or no. Adnan, Aniket, Arnab, Krina, anyone? No? Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit a story about myself. Just okay. So Linux to Windows. So you are a developer, Kuldeep. How come you are on Linux? So Linux is a very popular software for developers. It gives you a great amount of flexibility. But a little story about myself. Of course, I've been a PC user all my life, and I think that would be true for most Indians. We grow up with Windows PC. I had not really experienced MacBook so much, but what happened was that in my previous organization, uh, basically, I was told when I joined that organization that hey, you know what, Prateek, with your designation, in fact, you are eligible for a MacBook.
So I was like, oh my God, I mean, of course I didn't show it to them, but in my mind, I was like, yes, I've made it. I'm going to carry around a MacBook with me, and I'm going to look cool. And that's what I did. I basically said that, hey, you know what? I want to ditch the PC. I don't want PC. I want MacBook. Straight away, I said that. And of course, I carried about around that MacBook, and I loved it. There were some really sleek options. I tried to figure quite a lot of things out. It was amazing. I Every meeting that I went to, I made sure that I was carrying that MacBook. Sometimes I could have even jot down things on a pen and paper, but I made sure that I walked in the rooms with that MacBook. And call me shallow for it, but again, it was a new experience for me, and I actually was really enjoying it up till a point. But then it struck me that actually I'm a very, very heavy computer user, because again, I have to use complex algorithms on my particular device, and I have to do very, very intensive labor work on a computer, on a laptop. You can think that I'm a mazdoor with a computer. That's it. I'm a laborer with a computer. So what I found was that, in fact, if you again take a look at a very high level, you'll find that Apple MacBooks and your PCs, they're almost the same thing, because you have the same Microsoft Excel there, you have same programs there, same everything. But let me tell you, it was such a intense period for me, because there was so much work with me. At the same time, I was not being able to perform. I was not being able to do all those things on MacBook, all because I wanted to look cool, and I did look cool for some time. But after that, I had to give it up. I had to give it up, and I'm not saying that you cannot use Apple MacBooks for extensive amount of work. It's just that I couldn't use it, right? So I had to turn it in. After about month or two, I turned it in, and I said that, hey, you know what? Give me my PC. And again, since then, I am with PC, and even in this particular organization, I was given an option to go ahead and get a MacBook. But again, I think at least when it comes down to work, I'm going to stick with Windows. Now, what happens is that, and what I'm trying to explore over here, and again, what I'm trying to advocate over here is that what happens is that sometimes, as a bystander, things may seem very, very similar from one arm distance. But as a user, what happens is that these few different environments gives us a very, very unique experience, and as well as unique challenges. All of these are unique, I mean, USPs and unique challenges in and of themselves. And that is why you will find that people who are on desktop website, they will perform very differently from people who are coming to your website from mobile website, and same with iOS app, and same with Android app. What you will find, I'll give you a couple of examples, like M-Site. Mobile website is not at all good in their user experience at all. People don't People feel very restricted to how much they can do on mobile website, and that is why the churn is absolutely at the pinnacle when it comes down to mobile website. People who come on your mobile website, chances are they will not come back to your mobile website again, you know. But that is how they actually go ahead and explore something. They might come to your website once or twice. Then once they have experienced your product, then they may come back from desktop website, or they may want to download your app. But again, unique proposition and a unique challenge. Again, mobile website gives you a lot of customers, but the unique challenge is that the limitations are so high that people are not going to really stick to your website, right? Just like that, one thing that you guys might not know, but Apple basically was again a competitor to Microsoft. And when Microsoft created Windows, their first Windows, they became the most revolutionary company, because again, they basically made it as simple as anything else, so that a common person can use computer programs. But basically, Steve Jobs had a very different vision, and he was very, very bent up on design. And one thing that he started, and in fact, Microsoft copied from them, was calligraphy. So, beautiful fonts that you see today, these readable and these amazing text that you see on the web today, are all because of Steve Jobs. And because of that focus, even today, the reading experience on iOS phones are a lot more than your Android devices. So in case you write a blog, you will always find iOS app users to have to be reading more of your content than Android users. So just again, these little big differences, what happens is, because of this, we want to be able to track them differently so that we can improve on them based on their unique proposition. Because the things that I would need to develop and grow my desktop website would be very different from the things that I would need to grow my mobile website, and similarly my iOS app or my Android app. So I need to be able to take a look at them differently. So that is the reason why I want to be able to track these few different touch points that I have for my business distinctly, and be able to even analyze them and make decisions about them very, very distinctly as well. Having that said, now how am I going to use this property? Well, let's say Snapdeal is operating their business, and what happens is that apart from these different touch points that they have, let's say that they basically want to create a new Windows app as well, then they will create a new touch point or a new property in this case, rather than creating a new account. Again, a new account is for creating a new business, and property is to create a new account. And the way you would do that is very simple. Again, you will go to your admin panel. Let's say your company decides that, hey, I already have a few touch points, but now I want to grow my business. I want to add a Windows app as well. Well, in that case, you will go ahead and click on create a new property over here, write it in the middle. And of course, the four options that we saw while creating a new account, the same options are present over here. Things like website name, a website URL, industry category, and of course reporting time zone. Of course, you will have no problems filling out your website URL, industry category, and reporting time zone. The only thing I want to mention about website name is that the name of your touch point will go over here. So basically, if I want to create a new Windows app or something like that, basically I will go ahead and write Windows app over here, and of course fill out all this stuff at the bottom, and then click on get tracking ID at the bottom. So that's what I will do. Just by filling out these forms, these four form fields, I will be able to see on the other end of everything. I will get a new tracking code, and that tracking code is something that I will use for Windows. So again, each time add a new touch point to my business, I will create a new tracking code for it, and I will go ahead and install that tracking code on this new touch point. I will not use my previously existing tracking code that I generated for something else. I will never do that. I will only be using the newly generated tracking code for this. Now, is this absolutely clear to everyone? Adnan, Aniket, Arnab, Krina, Kuldeep, that what is property, when should we be creating them, and everything that comes with it? Mayurakshi, Prateek, Shafali, thanks Manoj, Arnab, Adnan, thanks very much. Perfect, sounds good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Mayurakshi, Shafali, Siddharth. Perfect. Thank you very much. Awesome. So having that said, there are a couple of things that I still want to mention more about property. And of course, by now it would be very clear as to what this is, what property is, and when we are creating these properties. But at this moment in time, it might not be very clear to you as to why this is so important. Like I told you earlier, property is where the action is happening and all of those things. I told you about that. Well, but why is that? let's go ahead and explore that, and I will go ahead and spend only next 5 minutes. We'll do this quickly. And that the reason is that something that I mentioned earlier on as well was that, I hope you remember this part over here. This is something that we discussed when we were looking at the tracking code of our in our PPT. Let me go ahead and get that slide for you once again, just so that I can refresh your memory. So basically, the tracking code, we looked at it and we saw how this tracking code is going to be the same for all of us, no matter who generates it. We discussed that, but then we also discussed that there was this one highlight, this part which is highlighted in red, and that is going to be different for all of us, because if you really think about it, this is basically the address where your data needs to be sent to. So if I create my tracking code on my end, I will have my own unique ID, because of course the data that I will be capturing from my website will be going to a separate location. And similarly, if Aniket was using this for his own website, well, his data will be sent at a completely different location, so that the privacy is maintained. So basically, this ID that we took a look at, where I told you that there are three names that it goes by. One was tracking ID, because it is coming out of the tracking code itself. And then we had UA ID, because this ID has UA in it, this UA thing in it. But then I also told you that it was actually a property ID. And I told you that, hey, you know what, there is a reason why it's called property ID, but I'll tell you later. And that later is today. So basically, it is called property ID because ultimately the address that I was telling you about, well, this corresponds to these properties IDs, these properties itself that we are creating over here. So what will happen is, and what you'll see, and what I mean by that is that when you create a new property, each time you do that, you will get a new unique tracking ID along with it. And this tracking ID is basically the address where your data will be sent to. So how you can visualize it as that these different touch points are nothing but three different Excel workbooks. Microsoft Excel. I'm sure most of you guys have already seen what Microsoft Excel looks like. So you can think, you can visualize it like a Microsoft Excel file, and what these different properties are nothing but these different Microsoft Excel files. That's it. So let me go ahead and write that. So again, all of these touch points will have their own unique IDs. And again, you can think of it like a Microsoft Excel file. So what will happen is that if there is any activity of any user on desktop website, well, that data will be sent over to the Microsoft Excel file of UA1, which is saved in UA1. It will go there. If somebody goes ahead and uses my M site, well, it will go in a separate workbook called UA2. If that person was to go on Windows app, well, that person's activity will go in a separate MS Excel workbook called UA5. So this is how your data is actually being kept. It is actually being kept at the property level, because property is what really corresponds to these MS Excel workbooks. And again, as a visitor comes in, and I'll just go ahead and try to again just try to show you how the data looks like, just so you can visualize it. Because again, we have been talking mostly about data in an abstract level, that this thing happens, that thing happens, visitor data comes in and all, visitor data goes out, and all of those things we have been talking at a very abstract level. So just to give you a visual connotation of how everything is really working out to be, you can think of it like this is a desktop website, let's say. So let's say that this is actually from this is a desktop website data or desktop website workbook. What will happen is that as a visitor comes in, and comes and lands on your page, what will happen is that data will be entered over here. There will be there are many columns in this particular MS Excel workbook. You will have the page URL over here. You will have a visitor ID in one of the columns, and of course the location, let's say the city, country, let's say time, and of course there are many more. So I'll go ahead and write dot over here. But what will happen is that as soon as somebody comes and lands on your page, as soon as that activity happens, what happens is if that person went to page A, that the URL of page A will be written over here. The visitor ID, let's say that will be written over here. Then city of that user, let's say Delhi, will be written over here. Country, of course, is going to be India. Then, of course, maybe the time will be listed over here. If that person, the same person, goes to a different page, what will happen is, of course, you will find page B written over here, but the same visitor ID, and in fact the same rest of everything you'll find over here. If this other person walks in on your website, well, that person might go to page D, but of course the visitor ID will be kept as 2, and of course this could be Paris, and of course that would be France in this case, and of course you will have 12:02 p.m. So again, just to give you a brief glimpse of exactly how this is really coming into action, how this is really coming into play, and what does this all mean when we say that data is being collected to. This is how everything is happening. And again, as I was mentioning again, this is happening at the property level, because you can think of these files or these touch points as MS Excel files which are working in the background. And again, as a visitor and as many more visitors come on your website, again, all the activity that is made on your website, it will go into their corresponding MS Excel workbooks and it will be saved there. Now, one last thing I want to mention over here is that, of course, I said that visualize this as MS Excel, but of course, this is not MS Excel. This, in fact, is database tables. So I should write these are in fact database tables. Database tables are in fact the appropriate name that you should be using. But again, you can visualize them like MS Excel just for the ease of visualizing. Now again, can I get a couple of yeses if this is absolutely clear to all of you guys that exactly what is a property, how can you visualize it, what is, I mean, every 360 degree of everything should absolutely be clear about properties, right? Perfect. Thank you, Mayrakshi. Thank you, Arnab, Siddharth, Annan, Manoj. Perfect. Awesome. Having that said, now let's go ahead and go one step beyond. And that step is, of course, view. So we have talked about accounts and we have talked about properties. One thing you might have noticed already, that in these two sections itself, all the tracking and data collection has already happened. Because as I mentioned, all the activity is actually going on in the property. So when you put a tracking code on your website, what happens is that the data gets collected from that moment in time itself, and that data, the visitor data, is actually being stored in these MS Excel files, just like we mentioned over here. So everything has already happened in the property level itself. The data has already been collected. Now the real question is, when the data has been collected, then what is a view and why do we even need it? Well, view is actually nothing but, you can think of it as a doorway doorway through which we access this data. And the reason why we create these views is actually for restriction of access. Again, you can think of it like a doorway, and it is used for restriction of access. So let's go ahead and basically talk about this. and see what that is. Let's explore the views. Let's talk about this doorway kind of a philosophy, and let's also see how this restriction of access comes into play. But let's first talk about doorway. How is a view a doorway? Actually, what happens is that when you create a view, uh, when you create a property, what happens is that as soon as you create a property, what you'll find is that a view is given to you by default. Google offers you 25 different views under each property, as I mentioned earlier. But out of that 25 number, there is one that is given to you by default, and that view is actually something that gives you unlimited access over all the data that has been collected. This special view is called all website data. Again, this is a magical view, a special view. Whenever you create a new property or an account, either of the ways, you will be given one view which is basically going to be special in a way that you can access all data which is collected uh, of your any touch point. So let's say if I want to start tracking my desktop website, of course I will create a new property for it. And of course, once I have created this property and I've actually gone ahead and started tracking or started receiving data from desktop website also, I will only be able to look at my data through this view. And again, this view being all website data, it will actually give me unrestricted access to everything that has been collected. All my visitor profiling, everything will be right over here. So unrestricted access to all data. Just to go ahead and show this to you in action, uh, if I just cancel everything out, one thing you'll find is if you take a look at the far right option over here, you'll find that if I just click over here just to zoom in a bit, you'll find that all website data is one view, the only view so far, because again, this is one view which is given to you by default. And what will happen is that of course we will go ahead and take a look at these reportings at a later point in time, and of course at that moment in time is I'll also go in and I'll also go ahead and show everything to you once again, and I'll explain everything to you once again. But if you take a look at the top left, of course there is no data, so no point in looking at data at this moment in time. But if you take a look at top left, you'll find that all website data is written over here, because again you are accessing the data through all website data, again which gives you unrestricted access. Now what happens is, of course I'll go ahead and show you one more property where I have some data, so that you can actually go ahead and see this in action really quick. The page will refresh in a second. As you can see, now I'm in a different property, but again looking at all website data only, because each property, again each property will have its own all website data view, own special view. So this particular special view is letting me access all data for this particular property that I'm maintaining. So as you can see, some data is here. Now what happens is that unrestricted data is great. It's absolutely amazing, especially for people like you and me who are just starting out. We want to take a look at all our data. We want to be able to base our analysis on all sorts of data and really come to conclusions that can give us an edge over our competitors. Right? So this is a great view, but in very, very big organizations like Make My Trip, organizations like Google or Facebook, something that they protect and they value something a lot is their data. I mean, if you think about data leak of Facebook, I mean, the entire thing is about data, right? It's all about the data leakage itself. If you think about apprehensions that people have regarding Aadhaar also, something that the government is trying to roll it out for everybody. And again, it boils down to data. Everybody is apprehensive about, losing their own identity, losing their data, right? So data is the new gold. It's the new gold of this era. So every organization is very, very private about their own data, and they're trying to protect their data as much as they can. One way to do so is to make sure that everybody in the organization gets the data which they absolutely require, and nothing more than that. Let's say if Krina is a person who handles train bookings for Make My Trip, then Make My Trip would ensure that Krina only has trains data to her disposal and nothing else. If, on the other hand, Arnab is a person who handles flight bookings, well, he should have only the access to flights and nothing more than that. So that is basically done by creating a new view, and which is again very limited in nature. So that again Aniket and Krina and Arnab and Adnan, they will only be able to access the data which they absolutely require and nothing more than that. So that is basically the premise onto which these views are built. That is the reason why we have these beautiful views in the first place. Let's go ahead and see how a company can do that. How can you do that for your company? How can we actually go ahead and actually do these things in our own organization? Let's go ahead and explore that a bit more in detail. And of course, there is one important aspect that I want to mention over here right away. So in this particular example, or in this particular yeah, it is like an example, it is like a illustration itself. So I'm going to illustrate this restriction of access to you guys. You will now in next few minutes see how big companies restrict their access using Google Analytics. We're going to see that. But as a side note, I must mention, with big asterisk. So what you will have is that we are going to use something called filters to do that. We are going to use filters to restrict access of people. So what happens is that there is something called filters which work on these views. And what happens is they can hamper the data that you collect, right? They can hamper things. So what I would recommend, and again, that is a recommended strategy, no matter where you read it across the web, but there is one very important thing is that you should leave all website data alone. You should keep that as is. You should not make any changes to that view. If we want to do any restriction of access in our organization, first we must create a new view and only then put a restriction of access on top of that new view. At least one view should be there without any kind of influence of filters, because as I mentioned, filters hamper your data collection, and unfortunately they are very, very much permanent in nature. So once, let's say if I go ahead and create incorrect filter today, and today is 24th, so what will happen is from 1st May to 24th May, my data is going to be pitch perfect, let's say. But after I erroneously put a wrong filter, my data collection would go up for a toss from that moment in time itself. And let's say I realize my mistake on Monday, which is 28th. What will happen is that even if I go ahead and go change that particular filter on 28th, the data that I've lost from 24th to 28th, that will never ever come back. That is done and dusted. Nothing can be done about it. So make sure that you are not putting anything on your all website data view. We will only be using newly created views for that. And again, I will go ahead and show you how to create these views and everything just in a couple of seconds. Before that, however, Suzoban has a point. He says that I think we can change the name of all views on my page. It is showing my website name. Yes, yes, absolutely can change the name of the views, but again, this is your default view. This is a default view. It will be given to you as all website data. Of course, you can change the name and everything, but again, the functionality remains the same. It gives you the unrestricted access to your website's data. And of course, we must never ever touch any part of all website data. We should, if we were to put any filters, any restriction of access, of course, we should be doing that on a newly created view at any given point in time. Okay, so coming back to our illustration, as I was mentioning, I will go ahead and demonstrate how restriction of access will come into picture for a company called Make My Trip in this case. And of course, Make My Trip has a unique proposition. So basically, this particular organization makes their money from hotels, hotel bookings. They make their money from flight bookings, and of course train bookings and many more things, right? So they're quite a lot, they're doing quite a lot in many verticals. But let's say that in this case we have only one vertical to worry about, and that is owned by Krina. So I have to give Krina and her team the access of hotels and hotels only. So she should get only hotels data access, and everything else she should not have any access to. If it comes down to trains data, if it comes down to flights data, Krina should have no access to that, only hotels data. So now let's see how would we go ahead and do that. And of course, to do this, there are two steps for a restriction of access. And these two steps are as follows. Firstly, to create a new view. As I was mentioning, we should never be doing anything on all website data view. So we should always be creating a new view for it. And the second thing that we should be doing is demarcation of data. In fact, there are three steps. So again, demarcation of data is the second step. Demarcation of data, just to give you a high level understanding, this might be a new thing. I mean, this terminology you might not have heard, but as I was telling you that Krina should only get access to hotels data. Well, first we have to explain Google Analytics that what is hotels data, because as a bystander, as a business owner, it might be absolutely clear as to what is hotels data. As a human being, we know what is hotels data, what part of my website is regarding hotels. But for Google Analytics, as it is a very dumb data recorder only, so first we must explain Google Analytics that hey, this is the data what I'm talking about. This is hotels data. Everything else, forget about it. But this is hotels data. So that is demarcation of data. That is what I mean by demarcation of data. This is something that we are going to use. We are going to do by a feature by Google Analytics called filters. We are going to do that. Next thing, the last thing is access management. So once I've created a new view, once I have told Google Analytics that, hey, this is the hotel's data, the last step is simple, and that is that I will tell Google that, hey, give the access of this data to Krina and her team. That's it. So that is access management. Out of this, demarcation of data using filters is the most important thing. And of course, that is going to be the most time consuming thing. Apart from these, the number one step and the number three steps are a piece of cake. So let's go ahead and get started without further ado. Again, we are almost at the verge of ending the class. So again, let's see how much we can cover. For that, of course, I will start by creating a new view. And of course, as you can see, there is a big bright blue button on the top right corner saying create a new view. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Over here, I will get two options only, reporting view name and reporting time zone. So let's go ahead and start by putting our reporting view name. In this one, I will write hotels data. because again, that is what we are trying to go ahead and get done. And of course, I need to select the time zone once again over here. Once I'm done with the changes, I will go ahead and scroll down at the bottom and click on create a new view. So of course, with that, my first step is done. So as you can see, it hardly took us 10 seconds to be able to create a new view. As you can see also is that now I'm on hotels data. I'm not on all website data anymore. Hotels data is what is selected. So that is going to remain as is. And of course, in this step now, I'm going to proceed. Basically, now I'm going to proceed to the second step. That is going to be demarcation of data using filters. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the fifth option from the top, and it says filter over here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And of course, there would be no filters at this moment in time, but I'll go ahead and click on add a filter to create a new one. Over here, just to give you a brief glimpse of what is going on, of course, I'll put filter name as hotels data over here, hotel data, let's say. Under filter type, there are two options through which you can create filters. One is predefined. That is the one which is selected. If I go ahead and click on custom, it will change what you can see on screen. It will change the kind of options which are available to you. As you can see, the options have changed a little bit. Custom. In fact, anything in life which is custom made for you will always be better. Of course, because it will fit better. Just think about a custom fit shoe or a custom fit car seat. In fact, if you take a look at Mercedes, the higher end Mercedes that they sell, they actually custom fit the seat for you so that you can actually go ahead and feel at peace on those seats, right? Just like that, if you buy a Ducati motorcycle, they will actually have you in their showroom, and according to your height and weight and everything, they will actually customize the bike, because of course that is what they are offering. So anything that you do in custom made is always better. But there is a great limitation in Google Analytics to what and how much you can use your custom, because even though it gives you the highest amount of variety and you can create filters based on many different factors, and again it will be greatly beneficial for you as well, but the problem is that there is something called regular expressions. And what happens is that these regular expressions are something that we must use for uh, uh, for setting up these custom filters. We cannot use custom filters without the knowledge of regular expressions. And these regular expressions are actually a part of computer languages. Unfortunately, I will not be able to actually give you these basically rundowns and tutorials of regular expressions, because again, this is not a computer coding class, so I will not be able to do that, unfortunately. But what I will do is I will do the next best thing, and that is I will go ahead and share two links with you, which are going to greatly help you in setting up your regular expressions and your skills. It will up your skills with respect to these regular expressions. The one link that I've just given to you, this is the best link that I've found. This is the easiest to use and the best link by far to get you started. Apart from that, there is one more link that I will go ahead and give you, and this one has an added advantage that this is a PDF. That's it. So basically, if you are out and about, if you don't have internet connection, and if you want to keep a book handy with you regarding regular expressions and their usage in Google Analytics, you can go ahead and download that book from the number 2 link and go ahead and get yourself started. But again, about custom filters, that's all I can cover. Again, nothing more than that, because again, regular expression is something that is going to hold us back. But filters, what are filters and how do we use them? At least we can cover that. We can see what these filters are, how do they actually fit the big picture, and how do we use them. Once you are completely clear about that, then you can refresh and up your skills in regular expression and start using custom filters as well. because again, you can create custom filters based on many different types of metrics. Having that said, let's go ahead and cover at least one type of filter which we can do in this session. We will do another type of filter in the next session. So again, let's go ahead and see what these filters are. And of course, as you can see, under predefined, there are three drop downs available to us. So let's explore what these three things are doing and how do they help us in constructing a viable filter for our own data. So over here, there are three form fields. The first one of which is basically all about creating or is all about telling which type of a filter is this. So what happens is that we will see soon that filters is nothing but a rule creation. So basically what I'm telling Google is that, hey, give me data that matches my requirements, right? If I select include only, that's what I will be doing. I'll be saying that, hey, I'm setting up a rule in Google Analytics. Google Analytics, please give me only the data that matches my requirements. That's what I will be saying. But on the other hand, if I say exclude, well, in that case, what I'm telling Google Analytics is that, hey, the data that the rule that I'm setting up over here, make sure that whatever gets through with this particular rule, exclude that and bring me everything else. Now, this might sound very tricky at first and might even sound like why would we need that? But again, that will be a little bit more clear in the next step. Now, let's see what is the next drop down. So next drop down is basically the factor on which you want to create a new rule based on which your filter will work. There are four types or four factors based on which you can create a filter under predefined section. Again, I showed you there are many factors, many such factors under custom filters. But in predefined filters, there are four factors on which we can create a filter. Well, these four factors are internet service provider, that is what ISP is, and then I have IP address, then I have subdirectories, and lastly the hosting. Out of these four, ISP, internet service provider, is the most useless kind of a filter. You will ISP is basically I mean, just to give you an example, if somebody is connected from Airtel network, Airtel is their ISP. If somebody is connected from Nextra broadband, well, Nextra would be their ISP. Somebody is connected from Geo internet, well, Geo Reliance Geo would be their internet service provider. But again, you will never ever, at least I cannot think of, I've never seen any client doing it. You will never be able to think of any reason why would you be creating a filter based on internet service providers. So we will not cover them. Of course, there could be fringe cases, but again, in most cases, you will not want to create filters based on ISP domains, so we will not cover them. But we will cover two out of these four, and that is IP address and subdirectories. We are going to cover IP address because it is, yes, absolutely, Adnan. We can do that, but again, you will not find many reasons why you would want to do that. But yes, we can do that. All right. So again, we are going to talk about IP addresses and subdirectories in this case. Why? Because IP address is actually something that I'm sure all of you guys would know that what is an IP address. So it is an easier one to get started with. Then there is something called subdirectories also. We'll cover that as well, but that is something that we're going to cover in the next session because subdirectories are the most useful type of filters. So we'll talk about that as well. Lastly, we will talk about, so basically these are two filters that we're going to talk about. And lastly, we have uh, okay, so let me go ahead and select IP address in this case. And of course, the last drop down, the third drop down is the expression. I'm sure expressions are something that are there in AdWords also and many other tools out there. So I'm sure you know what these expressions are. So we'll not really get in very deep on that. But at this moment, I'll select the last option over here that says that contain. So if I just go ahead and read it out loud, In fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and type in something. I'll type in something over here, and I will let you read this out. Go ahead and read this out and tell me what do you think that this filter is really doing. Exclude traffic from IP addresses that contain 192.168.1.1. So Adnan, Aniket, Arnab, Kuldeep, what do you guys think? That yes, yes, Kuldeep, absolutely right, absolutely right. So what we are saying is that we are telling Google. So someone is saying it will not give you data for this IP address. Absolutely right. So we are configuring a rule over here, as you can see, in a nutshell. And as I was mentioning earlier, that using an exclude kind of a filter might seem counterintuitive at first, but it has its own benefits. So over here, what we are doing is we are telling Google Analytics that, hey, this is an IP address that I'm giving you. If any person comes through to my website through this particular IP address, please don't show me that person's traffic data. I don't want to see that person's activity on my website. I don't want to see it. Now, the thing is, the important point to understand is that the data is there in property. The data is there in the property. Data has been collected, but this view is going to be a doorway through which you will be able to access all data except the data coming from this IP address. That is the most important part to understand. Again, this is a doorway through which you are accessing data, but only the data from from this particular IP address is not at all going to be accessible to you. Now, just understanding. Now, let me go ahead and I hope by this point you have a clear understanding of how this is working out to be. And Anand is asking me one question. He says, how would this excluding IP help? Could you please give an example for it? Absolutely right. And that's exactly what I was going to develop on as well. So why am I doing this and how is this helpful? So what happens is, just to give you an example of a company like Snapdeal. Now, Snapdeal is an organization, or at least was an organization, with about 4,000 to 5,000 employees. Now, that's a lot of people. And what you'll find is that if you have 5,000 people working for you, one thing that is going to happen quite a lot is that these people are going to go back on your website all the time, but only with one goal at the end of the day. And that is my website working fine? The new feature that I was going to implement, is that working fine? How is this page working? How is that page working? Is my UI looking okay? So basically what is happening is that your internal employees are doing all sorts of activity, but only as for maintenance sake. They are not really being guided by that buying behavior. So what happens is that as a business owner, as an analyst, you will always find it to be very difficult to understand what a customer is thinking about. Customer pattern, to be able to find that, it's a very, very tedious activity. It's a very, very difficult activity in itself. But if you combine that data with 5,000 people who are just going on your website many times a day just to make sure that website is running perfectly fine, well, it is going to make it harder for you to find those patterns. It's going to pollute your data. And that is the reason why big organizations, especially organizations like Tencent, who have thousands, I mean 50, 60 thousands of employees, well, that organization and such organizations find it valuable to keep their employees' data differently and their customers' data differently. So what they do is they actually go ahead and put their own company address, IP address over here. So they might say that, hey, this is my company address, and if any person is actually connecting to my website through this IP address, I know that the person is an employee of this company. So I definitely don't want to see their data included in my customers' data as well. So that is basically what this kind of a filter is doing. So now you might be very clear as to how this particular filter is working, but not just that, you might be able to appreciate that this kind of a filter can actually be utilized in more than one ways. How we started from having it being used as a restriction of access, how it is a feature to only be able to restrict access, but now as you can see, it can actually be used for quite a lot of things. Things like cleaning our data as well. So in the next session, we are going to talk about filters a little bit more and see how these things work with respect to subdirectories, because as I was mentioning earlier, subdirectories is the most powerful filter in the predefined section, and you will see how valuable this is and how easily this can be used to bifurcate data, to restrict access of our data with respect to the example that we had taken. So that's it from my side, guys. Again, if any one of you has any doubts or any questions, please do go ahead and share your doubts and share your questions with me right away. In the meantime, what I will also go ahead and do is I will also go ahead and get the feedback link for you guys really quick, which you can go ahead and fill it out for me. Again, whatever it is, the good, bad, or the ugly, just make sure that you go ahead and get yourself heard. Make sure you go ahead and just answer those 4 questions which are there. Make sure you go ahead and click on that one. But thank you very much, guys. Again, thank you, Adnan, Aniket, Arnab, Kuldeep, Manoj, Prateek, Siddharth, Simon, and Susoban. Uh, I will. Okay, so Prateek is saying, can you send the link to the Tuesday's class? I've already shared the recording. You should get that link with you maybe tomorrow or something. You should. Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you once again. Have a great night ahead of yourself. Make sure again you go ahead and click on that feedback link and you go ahead and fill it out. Thank you very much. I will see you guys next time. Have a great night ahead of yourself. Bye bye.